Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I'm about to start the show. I know you want to hear the podcast, but I've got to plug my books. I wrote them for you. Start with Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, a best-selling book. And why is it best-selling? It shows you how to look at your life from the attacker's point of view. That's right. It helps you see things the way attackers see it, so you're more likely to avoid violent encounters altogether. It has 2 workbooks that go with it. The first one is the threat assessment workbook, so you can apply what you understand how the attacker thinks. And the second workbook is the defense assessment, where you take all of that knowledge you've learned how attackers look at you and you build your own defenses. There's nothing else like this. Nobody else shows you how the attackers look at you and then teach you how to defend against that and then give you workbooks to employ that knowledge in your own life. Just think about it. You could make your business, your school, your family safer by looking at them from the attacker's point of view and then employing that into your life through the workbooks. Also, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. It's a book full of lessons. The lessons aren't written in words, though. The lessons are built in the pictures. You can then go to teamlittlebigs.com and download the lesson plans so that the parent can have the lesson plans, the child gets the book, and as they go through the pictures in the book, you can then point out the lessons and understand yourself where they're located in the pictures by looking at the lesson plans at teamlittlebigs.com. That's all. That's all you need to secure your entire family. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It's 2 workbooks, and The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children, at teamlittlebigs.com, where the lesson plans are. Put that all together. You will be safer. I wouldn't have written them and I wouldn't be selling them if I didn't care and if I didn't feel like I could put what needed to be in there for you to make you safer. Go get them, and let's start the show. This is Jonathan Gilliam back in on the Experts Podcast. The truth has arrived. No soundbite. I want to get straight into it today. I just checked my Instagram a bit ago, and I got a little nastygram from one of my followers on Instagram, and I responded back appropriately, I believe, a little harshly. Today was not a good day to try to come at me about yesterday's show. Yesterday, if you listened to the show and if you saw the title of the show, the title of the show basically says it all. The leftists are more prepared than the patriots in this country. Absolutely true. And there were very few people that disagreed with me on that. But one person in particular didn't like the fact that I said that patriots in this nation are lazy. They're absolutely lazy. What you see, everything that you see going on right now, all these statues being torn down, all the riots that are happening, the protests, and no counter protest. I'm not saying to go against, I can't explain this enough. And I'm always saying this in each episode because there's a bunch of weirdos going around right now, leftist, young people, trying to get people fired and dismissed from their contracts or their scholarships by making up stuff or taking stuff out of context, okay? I'm not going to let that happen. To me, the fact is there's not a racial bone in my body. Everybody knows that. I grew up poor. Poverty is the real equalizer. And what is happening now and these protests that are happening solve nothing. The inner city, folks, just this weekend, Okay, let me pull these numbers up before I read you any of this other stuff that I was going to go into here. Listen, I mentioned the numbers yesterday. Yesterday, which was, I record these the night before. Like right now, it's 4:30 a.m. Tuesday morning. So it's going to upload at around 7. And so I literally have recorded the show just an hour before it goes out. I recorded Monday show at Monday at 4 a.m. At that point, they were saying 70 people in Chicago, right? Now they're saying 104 shot in Chicago this weekend, 14 killed. Black on black crime. Illegally acquired weapons. Mostly, well, they're all criminals, but gang and drug dealers and things like that. Charlotte, 3 killed, 11 hurt. That's at one party. New York had, I don't know, it was around 20 shootings. Minneapolis had shootings. They even had another shooting inside Chaz, Autonomous Zone, whatever they want to call it. And lo and behold, now the mayor is saying, well, we're going to have to disband this thing. As I said yesterday, what's happening there is a perfect example of what's going to happen to this country if you get rid of cops, if the inner city isn't cleaned up, if we realize that the quote-unquote systemic racism that is happening can be cured if the violence or the violent areas of each major city is cleaned up and people start taking responsibility. Yes, I'm saying it. Whether you have black skin or white skin or brown skin or khaki skin, whatever. Those that live in the inner city live a hopeless life, a helpless life. And a lot of it has to do with the way they're brought up, but also self-choices. Poor people the same way. I know I lived poor, I worked in the inner city. I've seen it. It's a violent, vile place. And that's where police tactics come from. That is where the disrespect of law enforcement comes from. The dress codes. You know how guys wear the hat sideways and one leg pulled up and the pants pulled down. You know where the saggy pants started? Because people would get frisked by the cops after they've robbed something, killed somebody, done something, and they check the hat to see if anything's in there, and then they toss it back up on their head. And that's how that's how these dress codes started. So you know, it's a process of understanding the reality of the image you present. And on the other side, as I always say, it's a process of learning that not everybody that dresses or looks or lives in a certain place is a bad, violent person. But that's a process that has to be fixed, and people have to be honest about it. That's not happening from these protests. It's not happening. And it's clearly evident because, one, they don't protest there. They don't go into those areas and tear things down or burn things up where all the real trouble's happening. You didn't see any of these major protests going into inner cities and burning down crack houses or rioting against stores, known storefronts where they know that they're dealing drugs. You didn't see any of that stuff. You didn't see them going toe-to-toe with gang members. No. You're not going to see that. Because it's a lie what they're doing. It's a lie. And the number of people that have been shot and killed in the past 3 days is perfect evidence of that. So when I made my comments yesterday about the very fact that conservatives, constitutionalists, patriots, whatever you want to call yourself in this country, You are not doing your job. The country is completely falling apart. And people say, well, I think you're kind of overreacting. I'm not overreacting. Again, they've tried to put an autonomous zone in Nashville. They've tried to do it in Washington, D.C. tonight. They tried to tear down Thomas Jefferson's statue. They painted on that church where they raised such a ruckus because the president went and stood in front of it to show support and strength because the church had been burnt, and it's a major landmark in Washington, D.C. They just spray painted the whole front of the thing. And now that mayor, who was going to actually help them put up that, is now backing up a little bit, just like the mayor in Seattle. And so when I see somebody write me after yesterday and me scolding, yes, I scolded you. I'm one of you. I am a patriot. I've done plenty of service. All right. I think I've stood my ground and done my stuff and shed my blood for this country. And I don't see the majority of you doing any of that. Only 1% of the entire population has ever served in the military. And 90% of the people that served in the military aren't even trained for combat, let alone going into combat. Law enforcement numbers are minuscule. And so the people who officially go out there and do stuff they don't serve for you so that you can be free. They serve the Constitution and defend the Constitution, which provides freedom. See, this is the mistake Americans make. They think that their freedom is just okay because those troops, hey, thank you for my freedom. Bullshit. I didn't serve for your freedom. I served for that Constitution so that freedom could reign in this country. But you all think that the military goes out there to defend your freedom, you individually. But that is not the case. And I know a lot of military people have been thinking that forever and ever, thinking that's what their job is. Your freedom is a result of the commitment that we make to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Period. And you get to take advantage of that, and you won't even step up to the plate here at home while your country is being destroyed around you. And this guy, Rocky Fan Forever on Instagram, this is what he writes me. Guess I was talking directly to him yesterday when I said that people were lazy. I don't remember saying that people were cowards. I don't ever remember using the word coward. It's not a typical word that would come out of my mouth. But he says, guess protecting my family from this hate and rage by staying out of it. Okay. Yeah, great. You kept your family out of the rage and hate. You stayed out of it. He says, by staying out of it for the moment makes me a coward. Well, I never said you were a coward. I said you're lazy. I said that you're not engaged and you're not out there organizing. I'm not saying you have to go out in the front line and duke it out or pick up a gun and go muster with the boys and go out and go to war. That's not what I'm saying. The war starts now, and the way it starts is by you and others getting together and, first of all, realizing what's actually happening in this country. I don't think most people realize what's occurring. There's never been a greater nation than the United States, but nations in history that lasted 500 years fell that fast because of this same exact thing. Free people get lazy and they get comfortable and they think somebody else is going to do it for them. They think somebody else is going to, and they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want their families to be broken up. Well, guess what? All of that stuff's going to happen anyway. Communism reigns in this country, or what the quote unquote socialism, there'll be a thing called normalization. And just like my buddy Drago, you can talk to him. Just like Drago was telling us, he spent almost 3 years in a re-education camp. so that he could learn the ways of the socialist regime and wouldn't try to rebel anymore and be free. So you don't want your families broken up? You better start organizing and talking and realizing what's going on, and then getting somebody who knows tactics. I asked this question yesterday. How many of you out there know what a flank is? And it's not just a stake. It's something it's a tactic that you use to get around your enemy when they're coming at you. And the leftists know how to do that. And that should freak you out that they know how to do that. They do. They know these tactics. So he goes on to say, guess working multiple jobs makes me lazy. You know, the arrogance of this response to my podcast yesterday is over the top narcissistic. I never said anything about working 2 jobs or trying to keep your family safe. Those are honorable things. But you shouldn't let your honorable things to keep your family together get in the way of organizing with other patriots to get ready for the fight. Because the fight is coming. It's not going to end with just statues. That freaking wacko Sean, what's his name here? Sean King, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. The guy's whiter than the inside of a Solo cup, and yet claims he's black. And he's saying, Sean King is saying, that all the Jesus images in this country should be torn down. All the stained glass windows should be knocked out. Now, it's one thing to threaten the country. Okay, the country is made of man. I serve for God and country and family. Nobody's touching my family. And nobody's touching my God. Of course, I'm not worried about God. He can take care of himself. But you start attacking the churches, Sean King, and that'll be the last mistake you ever make. So this individual, when he comments on this stuff, as though I went after him directly saying that he's lazy and that he's a coward. Brother, you got more problems than what I say on a podcast if you think I was directly talking to you and saying that you're lazy and you're a coward. I don't know you. He says he didn't like that I called you cowards and lazy today. Disappointed to hear me say that. Well, this is my reply. You need to stop acting like a bitch and grow a pair. And I don't normally talk about that, but this is my work voice right here, okay, folks? I've got a work voice. Everything I said was true. I'm happy that you've done a great job taking care of your family there, Rocky fan forever. But the world is crumbling around you now, and soon you and your family won't have freedoms left. That's what's happening. And then I told him, do me a favor, stay off my page or get on board. And I mean it. These are the types of people that are that arrogant and that narcissistic that they'll come out and make a statement like that, and when it hits the fan, they're the last ones around. They just will not come out because they don't want to risk it. They don't want to risk it. Well, if it gets any worse, I might risk it. And then when it gets worse, they cower with their family and try to run away from the problem. Meanwhile, those who stepped up before is exactly what's going to happen. I can guarantee it's what's going to happen. Those men and women that stepped up, that 1% that stepped up before and served the Constitution so that you could be free, those people are going to be the ones that end up having to do it again for you here at home. Because all the majority of people do is sit on their couches and they go to work. Yeah, okay, you have 2 jobs. Great. You're going to be paying 90% of your wages in taxes if you don't start getting on board. Now, one thing about Sean King and I got a whole myriad of words for that guy. but I'll keep it clean on my podcast. It shows that there is an issue here with religion. It shows that communists hate Christ. They hate Jesus. It's a powerful word, Jesus. I had a dream one time that a guy was possessed and everybody was like calling 911 and they were trying to, they didn't know what to do and people were panicking. And you could tell something was going on with this guy. And I walked over and I remember there was an elderly woman there, tiny little elderly woman. And we both grabbed hands and we got down and we placed our hands on him and we just started saying, Jesus, 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 Jesus. We just kept saying it over and over again, Jesus. And the demon that was inside of him couldn't take it. That name instills fear in them. And we just kept saying it, Jesus. And eventually, I remember you could feel it. It just drifted away. And then the guy came back. Now, that was a dream, but it was I woke up afterwards. I was unbelievable feeling afterwards. I mean, I was just like, what just happened? It was as if I was really there. My heart was pounding. Adrenaline was flowing. When these people start going after Jesus, you know something big is happening. And the individuals that they've gone after, the founding fathers they're going to take down a statue of Teddy Roosevelt in front of the Museum of Natural History. On one side of him, he's on a horse. On one side of him is an African American or person. I don't know if it was a man or woman. On the other side is the Indian chief. I mean, I don't know. And he's on a big horse, and they all look like kind of proud, like they're thinking hard. I don't know what the designers or the artists that designed that statue. Statue's been there for 80 years. I don't know what their motivation was, and I don't exactly know why it was made the way it was. But I've seen that statue in person, and I never thought of racism when I saw it. I thought it looked pretty amazing. You have the president, who is the highest political office in the United States, on a horse, looking like he's charging, and he's got a black person and an Indian beside him. That's what I saw. You see, I learned this a long time ago about cameras and body cameras that cops wear. People will still see what they want to see and hear what they want to hear. In fact, the Bible tells us that. They will see what they want to see and hear what they want to hear. And that's what's happening. And their focus is turning on Jesus now. Listen to this story. After I saw the thing and it's on my Twitter about Sean King, I was going over some news stuff, and I see that it's from the Wall Street Journal. Attorney General Barr and Berman, that was the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York, in New York City, Berman, they were at odds before the president and Barr fired Berman. And he looks like a total freaking turd, this guy. They were at odds over a letter criticizing New York City mayor. Now, this letter that was drafted, I guess, by Attorney General Barr, or at least it was approved by him, was supposed to be signed by the head of the Civil Rights Division. And it was also supposed to be signed by Mr. Berman. Now, the head of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, Eric Dreiband, I think, Dreiband, he did sign the letter. And Mr. Berman refused to sign the letter. And that's where, if you saw in the news yesterday, and all this stuff was going on where he was saying that I'm not going to leave. I was appointed to this position. I don't have to leave, because he was appointed by judges. And he was saying that he didn't have to leave. Well, I guess he found out differently. But here's the thing that struck me after seeing the story about Shaun King, is that the letter that he refused to sign was a letter condemning Mayor Dingbat de Blasio in New York City and the limitations and civil rights violation, basically, that he committed against religious freedom in the city of New York, not allowing people to go to church, but then turning around and allowing protests and riots to happen, and the protest to happen, not enforcing any mask rule or any type of quarantine or social distancing. He didn't mandate any of that stuff. He just let them go out there and do it. And the way he justified it was by saying that, these historic things, you just can't stop them from happening. Well, he's the mayor of New York City. He could have stopped them from happening. But he chose not to, but he did choose to stop people from worshiping. Now, it's clear, and everybody knows, and I'm not just making this up, de Blasio and his wife are communists. His parents were communists. He's changed his name. This is his third name that he's had. He got married or honeymooned in Russia, same thing as Bernie Sanders, and he worked for the communist Nicaraguans while we were at war with them. Now, how a person like that gets to a position that he's in, I mean, you don't get that way unless you're a part of a group of people that think just like you do. So this letter that was drafted by the Department of Justice against him, Mr. Berman refused to sign it. Now, why would he refuse to sign that letter? If the head of the Civil Rights Division in the Department of Justice was willing to sign that letter, and that's the person, they work in that division, they're really the one who should make the judgment call. But this guy wouldn't. And see, these are not just two separate coincidences. These are serious matters. I think the reason he didn't do this is, for one, he wants a career outside of this, and he knows how powerful de Blasio and the Clintons and all these people, they're all connected. He's not going to blow that. And two, I think he's anti-Christ, anti-Jesus, just like the rest of them. I mean, I think you could assume that based on the evidence that is at hand and the way that it had really just has been going after Trump and does not like Trump and seems to love de Blasio. So this is happening, folks. It's really happening. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Okay. You have to realize that. I look at these things, I analyze it, and I speak from what I believe is the truth. And usually you don't have a problem seeing the truth if you realize the reality of what's happening around you in this country. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about that goes right along with this is John Bolton and his sound bites that were on ABC in this interview. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on him because I think he's a worthless, I keep using the word bitch, but it seems to really fit in these days, right? It really does. I know you can't call a woman that. I guess other women can call each other that. But man, it is the perfect word for these people. They put themselves, I mean, I guess you could say narcissist, but calling somebody a bitch, a bitch who is acting like this, seems to just nail that point straight home. And he's whiny. And his whole interview was whiny. And like he's doing the country a favor. And he's on the edge of getting really, really old. And I've told people before, I met him once at Fox News. And I was, he was always put out there as the war hawk, somebody who was not shy about going after our enemies. And I love that. But I was fooled, just like we were fooled with Mattis, just like we were fooled with Kelly, General Kelly, just like people were fooled by General McCraven and Admiral McCraven and General McChrystal. See, I mess up sometimes. I admit it. I don't know if anybody was fooled by Petraeus. He's just a weird dude. There's all kinds of stories that come out about him from over in Iraq. He's a playa, evidently. But when I look at the way that these people act, and I know that there's Christians. I'm a Christian. I know there's Christians that listen to this show. I have a few friends who are Muslim that listen to this show. And I'm sure I have friends that are Jewish that listen to the show as well. So I don't like to go overboard with it. You know, this isn't other podcasts that you hear where they're just cursing up a storm and belittling people for political reasons. I'm not belittling people. These are actual characteristics that people have. But I do try to keep it clean on this podcast. So I apologize when my work voice comes out. When I'm talking about work, I'm talking about warrior voice. Okay. I'm not talking about, interviewing somebody and being polite. I'm talking about a warrior voice right now. And it comes out when I'm fired up, when I'm trying to get somebody to do something they should be doing. Work-wise. So I apologize for that. But it is unbelievable what we're seeing in this nation and the level that men in this country have sunk to. You know, they just whine. I was looking at these jackets for motorcycles that they have. They almost look like a flannel shirt, but they got pads all in them and everything. They're tough, and Harley jackets. All the dudes on there look like they work at a restaurant that grow the big beards and the man bun. And so I was like, okay, obviously that's just that one product. I go look at all the other ones. It was the same thing. What has happened to the male species in this country? That's why I know other people disagree with me. I think military service needs to be mandatory in this country. It may or may not ever happen, and I know the founding fathers had their reasons for it, and I don't like to go against what they believed and why they believed it. But I think Israel is a good example. Loyalty to your nation grows out of service. I think it's something that's missing. People would understand, young people would understand a lot more about the U.S. flag and why we don't burn the flag and why we don't put it on the ground and the reality of it. It'd be a lot less communist in this country. And communism is sweeping through the young people in this country. You should be in fear, because as I'm playing this clip about Michael Bolton, what I want you to remember is you hear him and you hear him making these excuses, and you hear how, he went in there, he thought Trump was good. And he goes in there, and when he got canned because he's such a freaking bitch and was worthless at his job. Let me finish that thought. Worthless at his job. He got canned because he was worthless. But here's the thing, and I want you to think about this as he speaks. He is part of the swamp. He is thought of as great by people in the swamp. Remember, they're not all leftists. There's also a Republican swamp as well. They're a little bit different. One is communist-based. The other is Republican-based. It's for the Republican Party. Not God and country, not conservative. It's for the Republican base. They're like the football team, right? The All-Stars. There's 2 All-Star football teams. Play every year, all year. That's all. The Democrats and Republicans. I don't know why the Democrats' color isn't red, because that's the color of Russia. Seems like in China, but that's the Republicans, red for Republican. That's how they got it, I'm sure. But you have the blue team, which is the left, and you have the red team, which is the right. Neither one of them give 2 craps about you. There may be some people in there that do, but overall, they don't. They either get in there and realize there's nothing that they can do, or they get in there and they hem and haw and do nothing, or they just really don't care and they're more dedicated to that paycheck and getting richer, which they all become millionaires. Like over 50% of these people that go in there will be millionaires by the time they leave office. That's some shady stuff right there. But let me get back to the soundbite. He is and always has been a Republican swamp member. And the people that thought he was great at the job are part of that swamp. That's why he always thought of himself as a success. That's why he always thought of himself as, I'm badass, because he was told that by the swamp. That was his image from the swamp. But as you're going to hear, I want you to listen to this and think about the fact that he is whining all the way through. Remember, this is the guy that got fired, okay? This is the guy who's so pompous and arrogant when the president, who's done nothing, I have seen not one single thing that he has done since he's a president that put this country in jeopardy. Not one thing. And even though I disagree with him on the design for the wall that he chose, it's more of a barrier than anything. They're even cutting it down in some places. I do believe his intentions were right. But still, he's done nothing to put this country in jeopardy. Nothing. Now, let's listen to old Wimpy here as he's interviewed by ABC News Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz, one of the nastiest people in media, who is not even a college graduate, I believe. I have to look that up. But I remember looking at all these people when they were in the debates questioning the president, and they weren't even qualified to be doing that. So anyway, she's one of those individuals. Let's listen to this soundbite. And remember, focus on the motivation behind his statements. And they're saying all these groundbreaking things are coming out damning against Trump. Just listen to what he has to say. Remember, ABC chose these sound bites, these clips to be on here because they felt these were the most damning for the president.
You supported Donald Trump during the 2016 election. You watched his first 15 months in office. What did you think of the job he was doing up to that point?
I think I made a mistake. I think I overrated the chances to make this into a coherent, rational, systematic decision-making process to advance American interest. But I had confidence going in that many of the stories were distorted. That turned out not to be right.
You say that you were astonished by what you saw. A president for whom getting reelected was the only thing that mattered, even if it meant endangering or weakening the nation?
Well, I think he was so focused on the reelection. Longer-term considerations fell by the wayside. And I think it became very clear to foreign leaders.
Okay, first of all, that is every single president's first term, their focus is their second term. Now, I would have to say that a president that serves a second term is more powerful than their first term. It's kind of a catch-22. Should we make the president 6 years long and give them a longer first term so they can get more done? Or if they're bad, is 6 years too long to be with them? I don't know. That's a debate we could have at another time. But 4 years, especially under the gun that Trump's been under, and see, this guy doesn't even take that into consideration because he's butthurt, right? He's got his feelings hurt because he got fired. But this president has been under fire, full strength by the left, since before he was even elected. And so when this guy talks about all these perils and these decisions, the president is trying to stay above water and get things done. All the while, every minute of the day, he is getting hammered by some media outlet or celebrity or people that have millions of followers, that blind followers. He has done more for this country under the gun than any other president in our history. Nobody else had social media like this. Nobody else had literally millions of young, insane, narcissistic, fresh out of high school and some still in high school, causing this much problems and distorting the truth in a media this powerful. It's never been in the history of this nation. And we'll go on with the soundbite.
that they were dealing with a president who just wasn't serious about many of these issues.
How would you rate Trump's ability to make a deal in North Korea?
How would you make the ability? She makes me ill just looking at her.
Well, I think it turned out clearly at this point to be zero.
How would you describe Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin?
I think Putin thinks he can play him like a fiddle.
What happened to the deal maker in those situations?
Well, the president may well be a superb deal maker when it comes to Manhattan real estate. Dealing with Syria, dealing with arms limitation treaties on strategic weapons, dealing in many, many other international security issues are things far removed from his life experience.
Okay, so right there, you know that he is just whining, because what the president did in Syria, myself and every other military person that I know, including people that worked in the National Security Council, felt that the president did the right thing, the perfect thing, in fact, because he gave the war to Russia and Syria and let them handle it, and Turkey, and took us out of it. As far as the way he has handled arms and the way he's handled he won't even say the other things, because there is no other things. You know, I said this again and again. I don't like Rick Grinnell. I mean, you know what? If Rick Grinnell came up to me and said, let's go have a beer and square this away, I probably would. But I'm not a fan of his. I had a run-in with him, and it was terrible. Nasty individual. He's got a terrible reputation. But you know what? If that guy likes the president, I have a feeling, because he is, he actually did a pretty decent job, in a job that I didn't think he was qualified for while he was in there, head of the national intelligence. But Rick Grinnell would be all over this, airing this stuff, if he felt that way, and I would believe him over Bolton, because Bolton's ego and the fact that Bolton is a swamp member, it's obviously clear that although Rick Grinnell is swampy, it's very clear that he's been burned by the swamp several times, and this time he did his thing. But this guy can't even name the stuff that he's done wrong from a national security level.
Do you think U.S. national security is stronger or weaker because of President Trump?
I think we're in a
Stronger
weaker
or
position
weaker?
around the world. I think we have the world. I think we have given up leadership in a wide variety of areas.
Of course you do.
I saw the Trump.
Show us where we are weaker outside the United States. I mean, it's just turmoil inside the United States, but show us where we're weaker outside the United States. Our military is stronger than it's been in the past, really 15 years. It's better well funded. There's more bullets. We're making more aircraft carriers and aircraft, and we're projecting the power. And you've noticed, since the president said he's not taking any more crap from Iran and killed their general, they've kind of backed off a little bit. I think that was way too long, waited too long for that, but I'm a little bit more of a war hawk than the president is. I mean, I know what our capabilities are, and I would not be afraid to use them and use them quickly, but that's me.
Administration has a chance to correct it, and we corrected precious little.
He's an idiot. I wish I would have known the future. I would have slapped him right across the face and said, you're an insult to the uniform that you wore, because he was in the military. I would have slapped him right across the face, not punched him. I would have slapped him, because he probably would have cried from a slap.
What would you say to the American people as you sit here? Donald Trump, one, he is the president of the United States. He has
I think she's drinking. He's the president of the United States.
A very strong base of support.
Yes, he does. And it drives them crazy. And when she asks him this question, he looks like he's about to have a heart attack, because he's getting old.
I tried to write a book that took the 17 months I spent as National Security Advisor and reveal a picture of the president that people can draw their own conclusions from. My conclusion is clear.
No, you didn't. You wrote a book full of slanted narratives about the man that fired you. That's what you did, Swampy. I wrote a book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. That's my own little plug. But I did write that book, and I've written all the books that I've done, the children's book, the workbooks. I've done that. The same reason why I served in the SEAL teams or the Air Marshals, at Camp Robinson Police Department, sitting there overnight, and in the FBI. I served for the Constitution, for freedom, and to make this country better so that Americans could live free. And the stuff that I've done along the way, whether it be write books, give speeches for free, was to ensure safety in this country so that you can live free. This guy wrote a book because he got fired.
I don't think he should be president. I don't think he's fit for office. I don't think he has the competence to carry out the job. I don't think he's a conservative Republican.
Okay, he doesn't have the competence to carry out the job. Sounds like he's doing pretty damn good to me, considering the fact of what he's put up with and the majority of stuff that he's done and said that he would do, he did. He's kept us, the terrorism attacks have just plummeted to almost nothing. They've caught a ton of people. There's been a couple attacks on military bases, and that by and large, which is interesting, are people that were invited by the DOD to come over here and train. Doesn't surprise me a bit. The most recent terrorist attacks that we've had in this country were here as guests because of idiotic, incompetent programs that we have. Why not send a pilot over there and teach them how to fly? Why bring those people into our country and train them on an American base? What happened to our secrecy?
I'm not going to vote for him in November. Certainly not.
This is definitely the dumbest thing I've heard on this whole interview. He's got this stupid smirk on his face. He looks like a really old Will Ferrell.
I'm going to vote for Joe Biden either. I'm going to figure out a conservative Republican to write in.
So you're going to throw your vote away and risk the potential, because writing somebody in does nothing, risk the potential of losing to a communist. See, that in my book that's a traitor for you. That's somebody who wore the uniform and then got it, became part of the swamp and is willing to forfeit our nation and the oath that he took over to communists because he got fired.
How do you think history will remember Donald Trump?
I hope it will remember him as a one-term president who didn't plunge the country irretrievably into a downward spiral we can't recall from.
He literally has not done anything that would cause the country to go into a downward spiral.
We can get over one term. 2 terms I'm more troubled about.
You see, this is all of this stuff that I've talked about today, whether it be now the attacks on Jesus, attacks on the church, attacks on the founding fathers. You should have known it wasn't just going to end at slave owners or like the statue in New Mexico where the guy, I guess, brutalized thousands of people, thousands of Indians. The powerful people back in those days are the ones who got to put statues up. It was not much different than it is now. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would put a statue of herself up somewhere if she could. John McCain sure as heck would have. Both of them corrupt beyond belief. Both of them with their daughters that go around with these egos acting like they are something and they've done nothing. Their parents were the ones who did stuff, not them, and basically helped crucify this country. But that is the way it is around the world. The political elite and the rich and powerful or the expeditionary people, they have statues. It's just the way it is. But it's also a part of history, good or bad. And they could be doing this the legal way to have these removed. That's why I'm against the one about Teddy Roosevelt. But if they're going to remove it and put it in a museum somewhere, I'm okay with that. I would rather see it that way. that people are doing things because of the heritage or the memory of it or whatever, even though I didn't see the statue in that light. But that I as long as they did it in a court forum and people were able to say yay or nay, and then even have a jury judge on it, I'd be fine with that. But what's happening now is that people are trying to force what they think and force it on everybody else, and everybody else can be damned. That's the way that they feel. They don't really care. These young people these days, and the leftists have always felt this way, but they believe that the freedom of speech is you have the freedom to say whatever you want as long as you don't offend somebody. And that is really the speech that's protected is the offensive language and your ability to feel and think and say what you want to say. And as I always say, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get punched in the face, but it's going to protect your speech so that you say that. And there's a big difference between that and actual racial or oppressive actions. But you can't tell people these days about that because they don't know the Constitution. They don't understand the reality of how it was created. But the reason why I'm bringing all this stuff up is because in just a month, the tide has turned several times about, or it shifted several times about what the narrative actually is of what these people want. But all the while, the undertone is the reality that they are separatists. All of these autonomous zones have been led by people who are saying they want to be separate countries from the United States. I mean, it wasn't even 100 years ago. Those people would be dead. They would be dead. You can't even count on the military to show up and do what's right. They've taken knees. You have master chiefs or E9s, whatever they are, master sergeants in the Army, or sergeant major. That's what it is. Sergeant major in the Army, giving a stupid social justice warrior speech. He should be fired. FBI agents protesting. You can't count on them. Not that we would have. Local law enforcement, chiefs of police laying down on their stomach in front of an audience with his hands behind his back. Ridiculous things like that do nothing. He has a job to protect. If he wants to go be a protester, take your stuff off, quit your job, and go out there and protest. But these are not peaceful protesters. Every time they go after one of these statues, they are showing that they are rioters, and the motivation behind the majority of those people is separation of the country, division of the country. That's what they want. Remember, they believe from the division comes a synthesis, and that there won't need to be any government. That's how ridiculous these people are. Look it up. Look up socialism, communism, Marxism, and look at several things. Several different places. Don't just go to Wikipedia. Look up, talk to somebody who grew up in a communist country or in socialist Poland, and you'll see that there's no difference. There's no difference in socialism, communism, fascism, dictators, no difference. Or crazy people like Jim Jones that convince people to drink Kool-Aid and kill themselves. There's no difference. Charles Manson could have fit any of those categories. And that, my friends, is the show for today. Do me a favor. Forgive me for the language, but I'm fired up, and for good cause. Now, you know what? Hold on. I'm going to stop for a second. I have to say this before we go. Everybody keeps asking me on what they need to do right now at this point in time. Let me just give you a couple things that you need to do. And I've talked about this on a show already, but it's getting worse. And there's a lot more people asking. First and foremost, you have to realize what's happening in this country. There is a subversive group that have come out, and they have been indoctrinating your children for over 20, 30 years in school, in elementary, high school, and in college, and on TV. There's a media that's gone even further and further left to the point where they don't even care whether they tell the truth as long as it pushes their narrative forward. And you need to realize this stuff. They don't just want to make all lives matter. That is not what's going on. George Floyd was just something that they used to get this cat. George Floyd and what happened to him is not going to be fixed because of what they're doing. They have already veered so far away from that narrative, which there was good people probably that were involved with that, but they were used. And George Floyd was murdered, and we don't have any doubt about that. What happened in Atlanta was not a murder. That was a good shoot. But people need to realize what's happening. That's the first thing. And then you need to realize that all these people marching, whether it's 10,000, there's over 60 million, at the least 60 million patriots in this country. You all literally could stand arm to arm and probably put, when they did Hands Across America, if you're my age, you remember that when they did that? You could circle any state capital. You could fill Washington, D.C. to the brink where nobody could do anything. Look what they did in Virginia with 20,000 people. You could do it. You could do it. But first thing you have to do is realize what's happening. Second thing you have to do is take a deep breath and call somebody else and say, we have to start talking. And then call 2 more people. And then meet up and have breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And talk about this stuff. And then, if we can get enough people doing that, we can get out and actually start doing stuff, supporting law enforcement. So, listen, you get 1,000 people out and you see on television and you got 1,000 people that you're close with and you guys get out there and you surround these statues, you'll stop it. And you tell the people, go to court and get it taken down. But don't tear this stuff down. You're not rioting in our city. That's the beginning of this, folks, because quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, it may already be past that. You show any resistance to these people now, and they're going to want to fight. And many of them, although they're not great fighters, they're trained in the tactics of fighting. Most of them are about a $105 as far as weight goes, but when you take 50 people who weigh 105 pounds, well, you've got a lot of weight, and they can maneuver, and they already have stashes of bricks and things that you've seen. They have politicians in their back pocket. They can take over whole sections of cities. You're not qualified for that. You have to start talking to people. And those of you out there that are firearms instructors or former military that know maneuvers, you need to start thinking about this and putting some stuff together. I'm not calling for armed uprising. I'm calling for preparation. Because literally, folks, March 2020, April, May, June, 3 months, this nation has been crippled. It has been crippled. And you think it's going to get better by August, when I predict in late August when things are going to start getting even worse? You think it's going to get better in that time? It's not. People are going to start realizing they have no money coming in soon and no job. And when you add into that all this tension, and who knows what's going to happen next? Who knows? It's crazy what's going on this year. You have to start getting prepared. So realize what's happening. Start talking to 1 or 2 people. See if you can get 2 or 3 more there. Then start talking to getting more and more people there. If you're a firearms instructor or you're former military, start talking about tactics. What's flank? Go ask somebody, how do you flank a group of people? You need to know this because they do. And their propaganda is off. It's out the charts. It is. Those Twitter warriors that are out there on our side, you need to start getting together and stop just, making one comment. You need to get like 50 people and going after. You need to get 10,000 like they have and start going after them. Except don't use bots. You put out the effort. You go see a comic at a comedy show and they start talking about Trump. I would go to a comedy show with 10, 15 people. They start talking about Trump. You boo them until they get off the stage. They want to cancel. They want to use cancel culture on us. Somebody like Jimmy Kimmel, who used the N-word and word blackface. Why is he still on TV? See, that is where you should be right now, but we're already behind the curve. They have started using snowflake and triggered on social media to describe us. It's completely flipped because we allow that to happen. Now, that's the end of the show. Here's what I want you to focus on. And I want you to take this soundbite and spread it all over the place. You need to realize what is happening in this country. You need to realize it's been subverted, that the far left are on a mission not only to destroy statues, not only to take over parts of cities, not only to get Trump out of office, but they're going after Jesus. They're going after churches. They're defacing churches, wanting to tear down statues and stained glass windows of Jesus. They're going to a point where they are trying to injure the very foundation of this country. You need to realize that. You need to start having dialogue, and you need to start getting used to standing together. That's what you need to do now. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace. And I'm out of here.